have a team of 21 right now for Validate. It's a pretty big team. It's a crazy big team for indie games. But who is your team? Validate has a team of mostly all people of color. We have no white people on our team. I did that because I wanted to create a safe environment. And I know the best way for an environment to be safe is to be around people who are just like me.
Really, I have to wonder, what is actually going on with gaming? Is this a thing that was always occurring and I just wasn't aware of it? Or is it something that is just really recent? So there is a conversation going on around this, and all I've seen people doing is going back and forth with insults. I know it's easy to get super angry at people who think like this because nobody wants to give any respect to someone who discriminates against other people just solely based on how they look. But after the initial the initial ire that everyone is dishing out at each other, I feel like it's important to actually have a conversation about this and pick apart what people like this are saying. That's what I try to do online because I met some very hateful people, and I'll admit that most people aren't like that. And a lot of the people who are acting out of hate are usually acting out of hate in response to someone else having treated them like that when they were younger or something, or a recent horrific dramatic canon event that happened in their life to cause them to enter in their villain phase. We see a lot of guys do that, and then they like bulk up when a girl hurts them, and they like hate all women. And the same thing with women. It doesn't make it okay, of course, but just like the whole feminism sphere and the MGTOW sphere, most of those people are basically different sides of the same coin, and it all boils down to a really bad experience. Just generalizing a whole demographic based off the bad experiences you had with a member of that demographic, and it could only be one or something, and then you just have confirmation bias. And even though most men are good, you can look at one man doing something, and maybe every one in every 20,000 or one in every 500,000 men does a really heinous thing, and then you have that confirmation bias where you're like, see, it's all of them, or it's commonly attributed to social media hive mind mentality, where you just grow up with the iPad and you feel this is what you're supposed to think because everyone's telling you to think it. But anyway, let's jump into what this person is saying. By the way, the video is actually really long. I like people being taken in context, so I did watch through the video, and this isn't the only thing she talks about, but it is the most problematic thing that she mentions, which is why everyone is honing in on it. And I did watch it, and people aren't taking it out of context. She did say it in context. It's kind of hard to take something like that out of context.
Who is your team? A little background about this. I have a team of 21 right now for Validate. It's a pretty big team. It's a crazy big team for indie games. But who is your team? Validate has a team of mostly all people of color. We have no white people on our team. I did that because I wanted to create a safe environment. And I know the best way for an environment to be safe is to be around people who are just like me. And I'm not saying that white people in the industry are creating unsafe environments. I'm not saying that. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying that sometimes it is hard to work with white people because they think that something made it okay, but it was really a microaggression. And no one wants to deal with that while they're trying to make a game that they love.
Some people may see this and not see anything wrong with it, but let me substitute the words and change them around a little bit and see how you feel. But who is your team? Oh, Validate has a team of mostly all white people. We have no black people on our team. I did that because I wanted to create a safe environment, and I know the best way for an environment to be safe is to be around people who are just like me. I'm not saying that black people in the industry are creating unsafe environments. I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying.
And for the third time, I don't hate white dudes. Am I saying that I hate white dudes? No, I'm not.
It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that sometimes it's hard to work with black people because they think that something might be okay, but really it's a microaggression. No one wants to deal with that while you're trying to make a game that they love. Does it sound like someone that's tolerant who you'd want making your video games or entertainment? Remember how I just turned that perspective around? Had someone said exactly what I just did there, inserting non-white people as the subject instead, would you have been okay with that, as I just did? When you're putting hateful rhetoric like this out onto the internet, don't be shocked when people look down at you as an ultimate piece of shit. Now, I know that there are people who genuinely don't understand why this might be a bad thing, And honestly, that makes the state of the world extremely sad. But in the hopes of trying to at least make the world a better place in the ways that I imagine I would talk to a follower of the cubed mustache man, to try and like break them out of that freaking cult vibe that they have, which probably doesn't even make any sense. But anyway, people have done it. We've seen success stories on the internet. I wouldn't say anybody to go over in those places and do that because it's probably very dangerous. But I'm going to attempt to address why each of these things is problematic, why they have no place in gaming, and why more people need to speak up against behavior like this.
Who is your team? Validate has a team of mostly all people of color. We have no white people on our team. I did that because I wanted to create a safe environment. And I know the best way for an environment to be safe is to be around people who are just like me.
First off, saying you've built a team of mostly or all non-white people because it creates a safe environment already sounds like you're excluding people based on their ethnicity or the color of their skin, which is, the textbook definition of racism. Again, recall how I precisely flipped what you said but replaced it with a black person or anyone of any ethnicity that's not white, for example. It sounds terrible, right? It sounds awful regardless of the skin color involved in the statements that you made. The issue isn't inherently with people of a certain color or culture coming together and only hiring individuals from that culture, but going online and spreading rhetoric that is hateful at its core and recognizing how immoral it is when the situation is reversed. That's devious and evil. If you're making excuses to behave this way and discriminate against people based on the color of their skin, something that they can't control for reasons that you deem valid, that's basically excusing racist white people for doing the same thing. Be careful, because it almost sounds like you're excusing the act of being racist solely on how someone of a certain skin color makes you feel, i.e., in this example, unsafe.
Be around people who are just like me. And I'm not saying that white people in the industry are creating unsafe environments. I'm not saying that. That is not what I'm saying.
No matter how many times you tell us that's not what you're saying, that doesn't discount the fact that that's exactly what you're saying. The idea that safety and comfort come from surrounding yourself with people just like me completely ignores the richness and growth that comes from diverse perspectives and experiences. There's no way for you to grow professionally and personally or otherwise with a viewpoint like that. And I'm sure you would tell a discriminatory white person that as well, because if people were to come out and say, I don't feel safe around all dark-skinned people, and they give you warranted experiences that they had, maybe they got jumped or something in Brooklyn, which yes, that does happen, but then they discount all black people because of it and say something like that based on their bad experience, you would call them racist. You wouldn't be all understanding and say, well, I kind of understand why you would feel that way. No, you would just write off everything and call them racist. So why is it okay when you do it? For something that has nothing to even do with physical aggression. Saying you don't want to claim that white people in the industry create unsafe environments, but then turning around and complaining about how tough it is to work with white people due to potential microaggressions, that's a blatant contradiction. Like, that implies that microaggressions are exclusive to white people, or that their presence alone makes a workspace less safe. And it's not just immoral to do that. It's perpetuating a really damaging stereotype, and more obviously, it's racist, because you wouldn't want someone making that conclusion of you or people that look like you just based on their skin color, because people are more than just what they look like.
I am saying that sometimes it is hard to work with white people because they think that something made okay, but it was really a microaggression.
Again, as I've outlined at the beginning of this presentation, imagine if the roles were reversed. If someone said they preferred not working with black people for the same reasons, that wouldn't be acceptable, would it? In fact, the situation would likely make headlines and become a viral topic on Twitter, even more than this one, and the person's name would spread far and wide like a windstorm fueled by flammable liquid. All the multimedia websites would pick it up, and you don't even hear about this woman. You can look it up, and you don't hear about it. It's like only on Twitter. But it's the same issue here. Excluding people based on their ethnicity, the color of their skin, even with the intent of avoiding microaggressions, that's not the solution. And how do you expect to make the world a better place if you only want to feel safe all the time from the very people you're supposed to be convincing not to make the place unsafe for others like you. By that logic, it's kind of selfish to even hold such a viewpoint. You would likely say the same thing to a group of white individuals who decide to only associate with people who look like them because non-white people make them feel unsafe. You would argue that they're being ignorant and that they don't know every non-white person. If they got to know them on an individual level, their bad experiences or what they've been told about non-white people would dissipate, and they would understand that people are more than just the color of their skin. They'd realize that individuals are unique and not everybody thinks exactly the same way, despite what Joe Biden said about certain demographics being a monolith. That isn't true.
And by the way, what you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things. You go to Florida, you find a very different attitude about immigration in certain places than you do when you're in Arizona. So it's a very different, a very diverse community.
Excuse me? What the fuck?
People are individual. You have to be able to see beyond your own biases and prejudices. You know, you can't be so narcissistic to the point where you only see your experience as being the only experience that's valid. You're not going to be of any real help to the community that way. That kind of attitude, it hinders progression, honestly. It forces you into a place where you actually start regressing and doing worse for your community because you're not fostering unity. You're fostering dissent. And you obviously feel quite comfortable in your hatred and ignorant fear of basing your entire judgment of everyone solely based on their skin color, which is what you don't want people to do to you. So while you're talking about microaggressions, what you're in fact doing in this case is a macroaggression or just straight up aggression. And I'm not saying this is the case because, I don't know this person personally, but I kind of feel like she's one of the same people who would probably criticize countries for building physical walls, yet you're doing the same thing metaphorically.
No one wants to deal with that while you're trying to make a game that they love.
It's very ironic that you mentioned that you're trying to make a game that they love. Now, who is they in this context? White people or everyone? Or even the game developers? Regardless of which answer you choose based on the little choices I gave just now, in order for you to feasibly make a game that everyone would love, which I'd argue is quite impossible because everyone can't like the same thing. You would need diversity for that, right? Because people are diverse. How are you going to say that you want to create something for everyone but exclude certain people of a certain demographic for who you are depending on to also buy your product that you also want to make the game for? What kind of sense does that make? Seriously, are people like this actually serious, or is this some kind of colossal troll? By shutting out a group simply because you feel like it's too difficult or you feel unsafe because of the way they look, you're also denying the game and all of the creators that work with you the full spectrum of the human experience. But what's worse than that, even if you have this ideology, how did you think it was going to go when you went public with it or made it come out of your mouth? So you're basically telling a huge sector, a very huge sector of would have or could have been your audience that you hate them or you don't like them because of the color of their skin. How in your mind did you actually see that unfolding? Either you didn't think or you lacked the capability to think. And it's very embarrassing when we have people like this as one of the representatives of the dark skin community. For the love of God, more dark-skinned people, Ethiopians, Nigerians, Black Americans, Caribbeans, and people have descended from either of these groups or a mixture of those groups, biracial children, they need to come out and talk about this. Like, if you don't want people representing you like this, you need to come out and more people need to come out and say something. It's bad enough we have this kind of hateful rhetoric running wild in the entertainment industry when it pertains to movies and TV shows, but then to have it seep into our gaming community, it feels like the last straw for me. And you may wonder why I'm talking, or I'm always talking about this, or a lot of my videos lately are about this. It's because stuff like this is always popping up and going unchecked. It is directly affecting a space that I hold near and dear, which is gaming. And then if people are going to be looking at gamers, and this is one of the representatives of gamers, they're going to think we're all like this. That's why we need to speak up about it.
No one wants to deal with that while you're trying to make a game that they love. So, who is your team? What does your team represent? Is your team all men? What does that represent about your game? If you're making a game about teenage girls, why is your team all men?
Is she on something? Like, I'm legitimately asking, why do her eyes look like that? Girl, did you get high before you made this? Why does it even matter if they're all men? Why is your team all black? Why does your team have people who are all non-white? What does that say about your game? What if you had a team full of women? What does that say about your game? It's crazy, right? Like, as a writer myself, I can write a story from a guy's perspective, something I love doing. I'm a girl. I can write a story about a character I look nothing like. I can write a story about a very fat character. I can make a story about a wolf. I can make a story about someone with superpowers. That's one of the wonderful things about writing and creating. You can put yourself in the minds or the experiences of people that look nothing like you, and you can either pull on people's stories around you, you can do studies on people who you have met or experiences that you have listened to from other people, or you can just imagine what that would be like, especially if you're a very empathetic person, which this person clearly is not. And just like I have the ability to do that, and a lot of other writers, most writers have the ability to do that, so can men have the ability to make a story about a teenage character. Maybe they grew up with anime or they grew up with certain shows where those characters were at the forefront, and so they have learned how to write those specific characters. Some of the best anime about female characters have come from men, from the minds of men. The best anime that write the strongest female characters and the diverse stories of many of the characters in that story, men wrote them. What is this even?
Is your team all men? What does that represent about your game? If you're making a game about teenage girls, why is your team all men?
Why are your eyes constantly darting around like you took a huge bathtub full of cocaine? People like this woman would not hesitate to tear apart someone online for saying something hateful to a non-white ethnicity or about non-binary people or whatever she identifies as or whatever she believes in. And the reason why dumb people like this are able, the reason why people like this are able to just run around unchecked is because nobody stands up and checks them. People like this would probably claim that gaming is important because whatever is in gaming can perpetuate harmful stereotypes, and yet here she is doing exactly the same thing. Now I kind of understand why people are getting upset and insulting people, and it's easy to do that, but you have to add something to it. Like when my mother used to tell me, "You're a dumbass. Why did you do such and such?" She didn't just tell me, "Hey, you're being dumb." She lectured me, even though it was so annoying because it would go on for freaking 4 hours, dude. But she would lecture me and instruct me on the points and mistakes I made along the way and critical thinking. Hey, Allie, when you did this, what did you think was going to happen? Did you see why mommy told you not to? It was so annoying when she did that shit. But I understand why she did it. As a parent, from her perspective, she wants me to learn from my mistakes. So she's not just telling me, hey, what you did was stupid. You're an idiot. Yes, you are. But why? And that's what I'm trying to do with this person, because clearly, I mean, maybe not clearly, but it seems as though she has no parents, or unfortunately, maybe her parents were the type of people that spewed this hateful rhetoric into her. And that's unfair to say because there are some legitimately good parents out there and their kids get influenced by other idiots or cult members, and the parents are trying to win them over and saying, what are you doing? We didn't raise you this way. But they're so inundated with all the harmful rhetoric that they keep on ingesting that their parents can no longer reach them. And people just automatically blame the parents because that's the easiest thing to do. That's the foundation of the person. And people usually go back to their foundation unless they are members of a cult mentality. So we can't just boil down people based on their color of their skin. I hope that's very clear. And one thing I want to walk away with is I know it might be very easy to broad stroke people based on this person and get sick and tired of anyone who fits the demographic of people being hateful and in turn hate them. But doing that will only perpetuate the cycle of discrimination. If you're a dark-skinned person, listen very carefully, because this is something that I've seen online regularly and it isn't helping. I get it. People want to vent. I do it too. But if you are a dark-skinned person and you see a hateful white person or people online discriminating against black people in general because of what is being shown in the news, even though that's not the majority of Black people. Hold them accountable for that and kindly remind them that not all Black people are like that. I know it might be tiring for you to do that, but please be a good representative and remind them of that. Not everyone that happens to share the same pigmentation is exactly the same. It's not rocket science. On the flip side, if you are a lighter skinned person or a white person and you see a hateful Black person or people online discriminate against white people in general because of what is being shown in the news or what they're being told to fear or what their parents are instilling in them, even though that's not the majority of white people, hold them accountable for that and kindly remind them that not all white people are like that. If people on either side also hold their own people accountable while also fostering conversation and love and understanding towards each other, the world would be a better place. Stop letting the news tell you what to fear and who to listen to and who to like and who to hate. Stop judging people just based on their skin color. That is literally such a surface level thing to base an entire person on. Remember, when you take things online that you see and you take it at face value and it's filled to the brim with hatred, it's much easier to play victim and to spread that hatred than to fight against it. Remember the movie The Ring? You know, think about it for a second, because I never even considered this until doing this video.
Your phone rings, and what they say is, you will die in 7 days.
Hold up, this movie was by DreamWorks? The people who made Shrek? Are you serious? Anyway, you watch the video in The Ring. There's this cursed video, and you watch it, and something comes after you. And after 7 days, it kills you no matter where you are or what you're doing. The only way to have it pass you is for you to have another person watch the video, and then in turn that other person must save themselves by making another person watch the video for the thing to leave you alone. And if those two people end up dying, it defaults back to you, and now you have to make another person watch the video again to avoid it killing you. Nobody wants to die, and nobody wants to put in time to try and find out how to fight this thing. It's so much easier to just have someone watch it. But is it? It comes at a very heavy cost, because then all you will have over time is a population in constant fear of something that preys upon human selfishness. When you choose to remain ignorant and hateful, it's a form of selfishness, because you don't want to be bothered to be accepting, even to the point where you're out of your comfort zone. And that being said, you can't truly have diversity by discriminating. It's not a good mentally healthy tactic to work hard on creating a game for people that you know you hate. They make you feel unsafe, but not enough that you can't take their money though, right? And if people really truly feel this way about their audience, I know that free speech is what it is, and I completely support it. But I would advise against saying everything on your mind in this regard, because I don't see how it serves to help you from a business standpoint. Did she think that every Black person is going to come to her aid and her side and said, yes, that's exactly what we were all thinking, and we all agree with you. I'm going to throw a bunch of money at you now. And with her speaking about diversity, this only proves that she's far from it. If you only surround yourself by people like yourself, you're not fostering diversity. You're part of a cult.